Hi everyone, this week we've been talking about gender. And just to recap what we covered on Monday's class, we covered that sex is a biological distinction between male bodies and female bodies. And so we went over the fact that many species have a female and male version of that species, and the primary sex identification characteristic that is used to distinguish between the two has to do with the reproductive system. Any species where they require reproduction through the act of coitus, there's going to be a requirement of two separate sexual reproduction systems. Put them together and you reproduce another species. So this is very biological, very physiological. You can see it's more about what's going on inside the body versus outside socially. So sex is simply the reproductive systems and its related secondary sex characteristics. So this includes typically what happens during puberty, but even at birth. There's different levels of hormones inside males and female bodies. Females and males also have different brain structures, it has been found, and a couple of other small differences. These small differences are then exaggerated through social interaction, and we create a strict social distinction between how male bodies are supposed to act versus how female bodies are supposed to act. This occurs through socialization, and we get ideas about what masculinity is, how a masculine person is supposed to present themselves, how they're supposed to move, how they're supposed to talk, how deep their voice is supposed to be. We have all of these different socially created distinctions between masculinity and femininity. Of course, like we talked about, these are heavily exaggerated. There are many social practices that we engage in so that males look much different from females and vice versa, so that females look much different from males. In reality, our biology says that we're more human than anything else. So we talked about the concept of sex overlap, where on measures of biological distinctions, there are tons of similarities between males and females. This is true about height as much as it is about hormones. So humans have really low sexual dimorphism, which is the measurable difference between the male and female species. So in all, we're not that different biologically. So why is it that we distinguish so much between each other socially? Socially, we create all of these differences, some of which I mentioned. And so we're going to go over some basic theories as to why. So the first is everybody's kind of favorite explanation, which is, it's just because I enjoy doing it, right? If you ask males at a gym lifting weights, why is it that you are trying to bulk up? Typically, they're just going to tell you, well, I enjoy doing this. Why else would I be doing this, right? So science does support this as well, because doing gender does bring pleasure to people. Endorphins are released in the brain when you successfully accomplish your ascribed gender, and this works for most people, not all, of course, but we're socialized pretty well so that we get this endorphin rush when we perform gender correctly. The other is out of habit. So again, we're socialized and trained so well that of course it's going to feel natural, so that's another reason why we do gender. It's just we don't really know anything else. The other reason that we do gender as well is because other people enforce it on us. So gender policing refers to getting reactions from people for breaking gender rules. So for example, you might get a negative reaction if you're a male and don't know anything about cars, right? People might ask, like, well, how do you not know, how anything about cars, or, what sort of car that is, or how to fix a car, etc. That's a form of gender policing. Essentially, it's a negative reaction that is intended to make you conform to the gender role. So another example would be like if a girl is told by her parents, like, you need to sit with your legs crossed. That's how, that's how ladies are supposed to sit. Again, gender policing, trying to get someone to conform to the gender role that they're given by society. So here's a quick little review question for you. Have you ever been gender policed? Or have you ever been part of gender policing others? Just because since gender feels very natural, we can actually engage in gender policing without even realizing it a lot of times. The other thing too is that gender policing isn't just negative reactions, but positive reactions as well. So if a male, for example, is really good at fixing cars, someone might say, "Oh, wow, what a man," So this is a positive reaction that is intended to elicit continuing conformity to that gender role, right? So pause the video or take a second to think of two examples, one positive, one negative, of gender policing. So going into that question of why does gender feel so natural, it has to do with our socialization. So gender socialization is the influence we get from friends, from TV and social media, from our parents, who are our first socializing agents, socialization agents, or agents of socialization. And basically, gender socialization tells us how to follow and how to break gender rules. So we kind of find a little nook inside all of these rules that feels comfortable to us, right? We know which rules we can break. We know when, we know with what company, and we know when it's not okay to break certain gender rules. We do this perfectly naturally because we're socialized to be basically gender experts. We know what's appropriate for the gender role that has been ascribed to us by society. Media, family, peers, and all play a role in reinforcing gender norms. Speaking of media, here's an example from TV commercials directed at boys. These are toy commercials, and this is what is called a word cloud. So the big words you see on there appeared many times. So the more that a word is said in the commercial, the bigger that it appears. So look at what words appear quite often. The biggest one is battle, power, transform, hit, beat, rides, heroes, combat, car, vehicle, launch, quick, opponent, right? Words that elicit imagery of action and aggression and competition, especially if you look at words like weapons, power, ninjas. These are words that elicit imagery of competition. This is the word cloud for the girls. Very different. Love, fun, babies, change, friendship, magic, girl, totally, dress stylishly, talk right, easy, party, hair, color, mommy show. So these are words that remind us of looks, and it reminds us that women are assessed oftentimes first and foremost by how they look. Appearances is really important. Appearance is important for everybody. Doesn't matter what gender you are, but women are judged, and this has been shown time and time again, more harshly by how they look than compared to their male counterparts. So this set of examples of toy commercials kind of shows us where socialization comes from and why gender feels so natural. This is part of it. So that wraps it up for this brief little lesson. You should be ready now to take the quiz on gender, and good luck.